Well, the president's campaign manager is in jail. And I'm saying that slowly because that is the sort of thing you get to say once a century, if that. The president's campaign manager is in jail. The last time a president's former campaign manager went to jail was when President Richard Nixon's campaign manager, John Mitchell, went to prison for his involvement in the Watergate scandal and its cover-up. And the campaign, after the campaign, John Mitchell actually became Richard Nixon's attorney general. And so John Mitchell is also the very first attorney general of the United States to go to jail. And so note to Jeff Sessions, if the very worst happens at the end of all of this, if the very worst happens, at least you won't be the first. Because every day of the Trump presidency is a variation of some form of Trump madness that we have not seen before. It can be difficult to hold in reserve, for days like today, enough astonishment for the next dramatic development. The president's campaign manager is in jail. I don't know how to make that as stunning as it needs to be, because it comes at the end of a week of non-stop stunners. The president's campaign manager is in jail is today's most dramatic development and possibly most harmful development to the Trump presidency. And because we could see it coming, because a federal judge in Washington had scheduled a hearing today on whether to revoke former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort's bail and send him to jail to await trial, and because we knew there was at least a 50-50 chance that by this afternoon Paul Manafort would actually be in jail, the President of the United States this morning walked out to the White House driveway to try to create some drama and entertainment of his own to drown out the Paul Manafort news of the day, which was probably going to be very, very bad for the president, and did turn out to be bad for the president. The president's favorite morning show, Fox and Friends, was broadcasting from the White House lawn, and the president pretended to make an impromptu decision to walk out the door of the West Wing and walk down the driveway to the Fox and Friends set as if it wasn't all planned, and then do what was supposedly an impromptu interview with Steve Doocy. Now, we all saw the telephone version of that same interview 2 months ago on Fox and Friends when the president called into the show. And at that time, Steve Doocy actually did ask some good questions. But today, Steve Doocy couldn't think of a single good question. At first, he seemed like he was trying to rewrite the Trump chant of lock her up to lock him up.
From what you've seen so far, should James Comey be locked up?
Well, look, I would never want to get involved in that. Certainly, they just seem like very criminal acts to me. What he did was criminal. What he did was a terrible thing to the people.
The Justice Department Inspector General's report issued yesterday makes it very clear that James Comey and no one else in the FBI did anything criminal. So the president is lying when he says that what James Comey did was criminal. But he might not be lying when he said what he did was a terrible thing to the people. There is that theory that if James Comey had followed FBI policy and remained silent about the Hillary Clinton investigation, that Hillary Clinton would be president today. And so if what James Comey did was a terrible thing to the people, the terrible thing that he did was elect Donald Trump. The Inspector General's report says that Comey used bad judgment in his decisions to comment publicly on the Hillary Clinton investigation, but that everything Comey said about the Hillary Clinton investigation was true. The Inspector General's report certified Comey's integrity but faulted his judgment. And oddly enough, even Steve Doocy actually understands that, because the same guy who asked if James Comey should be locked up a few minutes later said this.
From what we've seen, though, regarding the IG report, it sounds like Comey made some bad judgments, but nothing criminal.
And that was Steve Doocy's high point. That was his finest moment in the interview. Steve Doocy and no one else at Fox News is ever going to have a problem with the President of the United States lying about the parents of soldiers who were killed in the Korean War. And as we pointed out at this hour last night, the President has already once lied on Fox News about that by saying that the parents of American soldiers who were killed in the Korean War asked him during the presidential campaign to get their children's, their sons' remains back from North Korea. This is a horrible lie. President Trump has never spoken to the parents of dead Korean War soldiers about that because all of those parents are well over 100 years old, which means that almost all of those parents are dead. Donald Trump has spoken to zero of those parents, zero. Now let's watch the ease with which this deeply perverse liar tells this lie about those parents again.
He's giving us back our great heroes who died, as you know. We're getting the remains back. And I've had so many people, so many parents, so many fathers and daughters and sons asking me, please, please. Right. This is during the campaign and after.
For this president who pretends to worship the military, that is a horrendous lie to tell. Within the reverence that the military holds for our lost soldiers and our Gold Star parents, it is a sacrilegious lie to tell. And the former four-star general, who is now the White House chief of staff, has done nothing to interrupt the president's lying about the parents of our fallen soldiers in the Korean War. In the president's show this morning, designed to distract from the Manafort case today and to distract from Michael Cohen's failed attempt in court today to prevent Stormy Daniels' attorney Michael Avenatti from appearing on this show tonight, which he will do, the president did more praising of the murderous North Korean dictator he is so taken with. The president of the United States was amused at the possibility and the suggestion and suggested the possibility that the North Korean dictator had executed some of his high command before meeting with the president.
Well, just before you met with him, he cleaned house. 3 of his top generals, some of the hardliners, he fired. Then you go over there, and you took some heat over saluting one of the generals.
I think he fired at least, okay? When you say he
3
fired...
that we know of.
I think maybe fired at least. Fired may be a nice word.
Fired may be a nice word. Steve Ducey laughs. Yeah, maybe he just killed them. Just killed them. Donald Trump does not even know that the President of the United States is not supposed to approve of dictators executing people around them. He is morally oblivious. He is, by an order of magnitude, the most amoral creature to ever occupy the White House. The people who have known him the best, known him the most intimately, have called him a liar and worse. His 2 previous wives have called him a liar. His first wife called him violent. And because he is self-centered to the point of sickness, he has no idea how to even sound nice about other people, including his current wife, who is still recovering from surgery of a few weeks ago.
Well, the doctor said don't fly for a month, but she'll be able to very shortly.
And she's on the mend.
Oh, she's in great shape. She's like perfect. She and somebody said, did she have a facelift? No.
Well, the only person I've heard say, did she have a facelift, is the guy you just heard say, did she have a facelift? So Mr. Oblivious brings up the question of, did his wife have a facelift, when no one was asking it? And he did that because he doesn't have any empathy, even for his recovering wife. He doesn't have any empathy for anyone, including all of his wives and including the babies and children on our southern border who are being ripped away from their mothers, separated from their parents, because Donald Trump, through Attorney General Jeff Sessions, has ordered that those children be separated from their parents. That was the question that showed the world who the people in the Trump White House really are. Do you have any empathy?
These people have nothing. They come to the border with nothing, and you throw children in cages. You're a parent. You're a parent of young children. Don't you have any empathy for what they go through?
Jill, go ahead.
The president repeatedly lied this morning in the White House driveway and blamed the powerless Democrats in Congress for separating those children from their parents on the southern border. When he finished with Fox and Friends, the president then held an impromptu press conference in the driveway, taking questions from reporters trying to shout over each other. And the White House transcript of that impromptu press conference reveals something that cannot quite be heard on the audio recordings. One reporter, one lone voice, who said in response to a couple of the president's answers, quote, "Why are you lying about it, sir? And why do you keep lying about it, sir?" The president never responded to his questions, the most important questions of the day. Why are you lying about it? But that reporter was the one lone voice directly fighting the lying, the one lone voice who figured out that the right question to ask the pathological liar standing in the White House driveway lying this morning was, why are you lying? Lying about the parents of our war dead in the Korean War, lying about the children on the southern border, lying about the Inspector General's report, lying about Robert Mueller's investigation, lying about North Korea, and lying about the liar in the White House who has actually pled guilty to lying to the FBI.
I feel badly for General Flynn. He lost his house, he's lost his life, and some people say he lied, and some people say he didn't lie. I mean, really, it turned out maybe he didn't lie.
The only person who says that Michael Flynn didn't lie is the pathological liar who was standing in the White House driveway this morning. And who are some of the people who say that Michael Flynn did lie? Well, the only one you really need to mention is Michael Flynn. Michael Flynn says Michael Flynn lied, and Robert Mueller says Michael Flynn lied, and the FBI says Michael Flynn lied, and Michael Flynn has pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI. But most importantly, Michael Flynn says that Michael Flynn lied. That's what's important here. If Donald Trump said one true thing in that driveway this morning, I would show it to you right now, because it would show that he knows how to tell the truth about something, and that would mean that lying is a conscious choice for him, that it's a conscious choice, and that he makes that conscious choice every time. And when you watch Donald Trump in the driveway this morning, you're seeing someone who seems to know that there is nothing in the truth that sounds good for him, absolutely nothing. And that's why he lies. The truth is so bad for him, he will lie and create a falsehood that his followers will believe instead of the truth. And so he lied about the Inspector General's report.
Now, here's the good news. I did nothing wrong. There was no collusion. There was no obstruction. The IG report yesterday went a long way to show that.
The Inspector General's report did not say that Donald Trump did nothing wrong. The Inspector General's report did not say that there was no collusion. The Inspector General's report did not say that there was no obstruction. The Inspector General's report said that Hillary Clinton did nothing wrong, did not commit a prosecutable crime, and James Comey was correct and followed Justice Department guidelines in reaching the conclusion that Hillary Clinton did not commit a crime. That's what the Inspector General's report said. It also said that James Comey should have kept that decision to himself and deferred to the Attorney General about how to handle any public information about the Clinton case. The Inspector General's report said that politics did not influence the investigation of Hillary Clinton. The Inspector General's report noted that everything that was revealed publicly by the FBI about the Clinton investigation during the presidential campaign, and everything that was not revealed by the FBI about the investigation of the Trump campaign's involvement with Russia during the presidential campaign, helped the Trump campaign and hurt the Clinton campaign. The Inspector General's report says that the FBI was not trying to help the Trump campaign, but that was just the effect of their work. And of course, knowing, as the president did this morning, that this could be the last morning of freedom for his former campaign manager, Paul Manafort, the pathological liar in the White House driveway lied about Paul Manafort.
You know, Paul Manafort worked for me for a very short period of time. He worked for Ronald Reagan. He worked for Bob Dole. He worked for John McCain, or his firm did. He worked for many other Republicans. He worked for me, what, for 49 days or something? A very short period of time.
Pay attention to this. Whenever Donald Trump uses a number, he is lying about the number. Paul Manafort did not work for the Trump campaign for 49 days. Paul Manafort worked for the Trump campaign for 144 days. So basically triple the amount of time that Donald Trump now says that Paul Manafort worked for his campaign. Steve Bannon and Kellyanne Conway worked for the Trump campaign for only 84 days. Like all Trump enterprises, it was a revolving door. People were getting fired for, among other things, incompetence, and then being replaced by more incompetence. And in the case of Paul Manafort, a criminal, or an accused criminal, who a federal judge believes is so probably likely to have committed the crime of witness tampering and is so probably likely to commit that crime again if he was allowed to go home tonight with his ankle bracelets and his cell phone, that the federal judge sent Paul Manafort to jail tonight. And so when Donald Trump is trying to fall asleep tonight in the White House with the TV on, he will actually be the first president in history to be trying to fall asleep in the White House while his former campaign manager is trying to fall asleep across town in jail. Because Richard Nixon's campaign manager didn't go to jail until after he helped Richard Nixon get reelected, and Richard Nixon's campaign manager didn't go to jail until after Richard Nixon had been forced to resign the presidency on the brink of impeachment. There's something new here. The difference between Donald Trump and Richard Nixon tonight is that Donald Trump's campaign manager managed to get himself charged with federal crimes and in jail much faster than Richard Nixon's did. What's happening to Paul Manafort and Donald Trump is happening much faster than it happened to John Mitchell and Richard Nixon. And as Donald Trump gazes at the TV tonight trying to fall asleep in the White House, he has to be wondering what we're all wondering. What does Paul Manafort know about Donald Trump that could be an indictable offense or an impeachable offense? What does Paul Manafort know that he could tell Robert Mueller that could get Paul Manafort out of jail and save him a possible prison sentence on a conviction that could, a sentence that could then last the rest of his life? And as Paul Manafort tries to fall asleep tonight in his first night in jail, he has to be wondering what we're all wondering. Will Donald Trump pardon Paul Manafort? Will Donald Trump pardon the guy who he now says he barely knew, the guy who he now says only worked for the campaign for 49 days? What is Paul Manafort thinking tonight about what the president said about him today? Who do you think is having an easier time falling asleep tonight? Donald Trump in the White House or Paul Manafort in jail? Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.